Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, April 21st. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Kim Mo-gen. South Korea reported 731 new COVID-19 cases Wednesday amid rising cluster infections. As part of efforts to curb the spread, the nation's education ministry unveiled strengthened quarantine measures for schools. The European Medicines Agency announced on Tuesday that the benefits of Johnson Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine outweigh the risks of developing blood clots. And almost a year after the death of George Floyd, the court has finally charged former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin guilty on 2 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. Our top story today, amid growing concerns over continuing COVID-19 cluster infections, especially from schools, South Korea's education ministry unveiled strengthened measures to prevent children from getting infected. It will dispatch testing teams that will visit schools for PCR testing and has designated the next 3 weeks as a special prevention period. For more on this, we have Kim Do-yeon on the line for us. Do-yeon, tell us more about the latest measures.
Good morning, Morgan. The Education Minister Yoo Eun-hye says the ministry will tighten its grip on keeping students safe, as since the beginning of the semester in March, there have been more than 2,000 cases among students and teachers. One new measure introduced in Seoul is a group of testers that will seek out anyone without symptoms that want to be tested by moving from schools to schools. If this seems helpful, the ministry will expand the measure to the rest of the country. As you mentioned, there will be a special prevention period implemented by the ministry up until May 11th.
The Ministry of Education will run an on-site inspection team to inspect all facilities under the ministry's jurisdiction, including kindergartens, elementary, middle, high schools, college, and prep schools. I will be in charge of this until June.
She says that during that period, education facilities, including private prep schools and after-school facilities, will be subject to inspections to ensure they're following prevention measures. There also will be a prevention task force created for university campuses. It will be comprised of both university personnel and ministry employees, and they will work to make sure important messages and measures are communicated swiftly.
Now, Do-yeon, can you tell us more about the daily COVID-19 infections here in South Korea?
Morgan, as for the country itself, South Korea reported 731 new cases on Wednesday. Of those, 692 were local transmissions. This is a spike of nearly 200 cases from the day before and sees us back to the 700s for the first time in a week. The reason for the jump seems to be due to lower numbers recorded after reduced testing center operations over the weekend, and now the number reflects the situation more clearly. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Morgan.
Thank you for that, Do-yeon. Now, moving on, the European Medicines Agency has announced that the benefits of the Johnson Johnson COVID-19 vaccine outweigh the exceptionally rare risk of developing blood clots. Before reaching its conclusion, the health regulator examined 8 cases of clotting that occurred in adults in the U.S. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The European Medicines Agency was clear Tuesday that the benefits of the Johnson Johnson vaccine outweigh the risk of not taking it.
The benefits of the vaccine continue to outweigh these risks, and we now have detailed information in the labeling that alerts to these risks.
This means a warning about unusual blood clots will be added to the product information for the vaccine, so healthcare professionals and people who receive the shot will be aware of the possibility of very rare cases of blood clots. According to the EMA, it researched all available evidence, including 8 reports from the U.S. of unusual blood clots, one of which led to someone's death. The analysis is also based on more than 7 million people who received the vaccine in the U.S. as of April 7th. Despite the very rare chance of developing blood clots, the EMA cautioned recipients of the Johnson Johnson vaccine to watch out for certain symptoms.
As for the symptoms to look out are shortness of breath, chest pain, swelling in the leg, persistent abdominal pain, neurological symptoms, and that includes a severe headache or persistent headache, blurred vision, and skin bruising beyond the site of the injection.
Johnson Johnson confirmed Tuesday that it would resume shipments of its vaccines to the EU after the EMA's review. The single-dose vaccine was initially given the green light in the EU on March 11th. However, despite the recent review, It remains to be seen how different countries will interpret the guidance. 이승재, Arirang News.
China says it's ready to boost cooperation with North Korea through tight prevention measures against COVID-19, hinting at the possibility of reopening their border soon. At a press briefing Tuesday, Beijing's foreign ministry called for the need to revive trade with the North. There was a significant surge in North Korea's imports from China in March. North Korea has also been making efforts by building disinfection facilities. Top U.S. military officials have reiterated that North Korea continues to pose threats to the United States and its allies, challenging stability in Northeast Asia and beyond. Our Kim Hyo-sun with more.
The commander of the U.S. Strategic Command says North Korea continues to pose threats to Washington and its allies, adding the U.S. will continue to work with its allies to denuclearize the regime through diplomacy. Admiral Charles Richards said in a written statement submitted to the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee on Tuesday that the regime continues to engage in activities that threaten regional stability and defy international norms. He added the regime has tested ICBMs designed to strike any part of the continental United States. The commander of U.S. Space Command, General James Dickinson, also testified that the North's cyber attack capabilities pose threats to U.S. space operations. He stressed Washington needs to invest and develop its own capabilities to counter such threats. Against this backdrop, a Washington-based think tank says the North is continuing to work on a submersible missile test stand barge at its Nampo shipyard, which could be part of preparations for a ballistic missile test. Referring to satellite imagery taken this month, Beyond Parallel, a project run by the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, explained the regime has positioned a cylindrical object on a test barge, which could be a launch tube for a submarine-launched ballistic missile. However, the think tank added that this is an assumption, as nothing can be confirmed based on available images. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's producer prices in March increased for the fifth consecutive month, mainly due to higher prices of industrial goods. The Bank of Korea said Wednesday that its producer price index, a key barometer of future consumer inflation, stood at around 106.8 last month, up 0.9% on month. Compared to the same period last year, the figure was up 3.9%. Industrial goods prices jumped 1.6%, led by rising global oil prices. Prices of electricity, water, and gas edged up 0.9%. Exports of South Korea's traditional dish, kimchi, hit an all-time high in the first quarter, marking its largest trade surplus in 11 years. According to data from the Korea Customs Service on Wednesday, outbound shipments of kimchi exceeded imports by more than $8 million in the January to March period. This comes as kimchi exports reached record highs of over $46 million, up 54% from the same period last year. Japan, the U.S., and Hong Kong were the biggest export destinations. Experts say growing worldwide awareness of the benefits of kimchi for immunity have contributed to the surge in exports. The South Korean government has finished ratifying key international conventions on workers' rights with the International Labor Organization. They cover forced labor, freedom of association, and the right to organize and collective bargaining. Attending Tuesday's virtual event were ILO Chief Guy Ryder and South Korea's Labor Minister. They will take effect in April 2022. The government expects the ratification to guarantee basic workers' rights and help lower risks on trade and commerce. Almost a year after the killing of George Floyd, a Minneapolis court has finally found the responsible party accountable for his actions. Former police officer Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on 2 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter over Floyd's death. Kim Yeon-sing has the latest.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin on Tuesday local time was found guilty on all 3 charges related to the death of George Floyd.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
Chauvin's charges included second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. This verdict comes almost a year after George Floyd died as a result of Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. The viral video of the incident sparked worldwide racial equality movements. Outside court, crowds who had gathered in the George Floyd Square to await the results of this trial rejoiced at the news.
I feel like the fact that we were able to secure justice for George Floyd means that we can secure justice for every Black person who was killed by police.
Many, including President Joe Biden, found the verdict to be a step in the right direction.
We've been talking, we've been watching every second of this, and the Vice President, all of us, and we're all so relieved, not just one verdict, but all three, purely on all three counts. And it's really important. I'm anxious.
He mattered because he was a human being, and there is no way we can turn away from that reality. We need true justice. That's not one case. That is a social transformation that says that nobody's beneath the law and no one is above it.
Mr. Chauvin's sentence will be announced in the coming weeks. State guidelines suggest that since Chauvin has no criminal history, he might be sentenced to a little over 12 years in prison for the counts of second-degree unintentional murder and third-degree murder, and 4 years for second-degree manslaughter. But the state has requested a heftier sentence of up to 40 years, citing aggravating factors like Chauvin's particular cruelty in treating the late George Floyd, abuse of power, and killing in the presence of children. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has sent an offering to the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors the country's war dead. Kyodo News reported Wednesday that Suga sent a ritual tree offering to celebrate the start of the Spring Festival. According to the source, Suga will refrain from visiting the shrine in person. Last autumn, the Prime Minister also sent an offering to the shrine instead of going there himself to avoid angering neighboring nations. The Yasukuni Shrine has been shrouded in controversy as it commemorates 14 Class A war criminals along with millions of war dead. Russia has ordered 2 Bulgarian diplomats to leave the country in retaliation for Bulgaria's expulsion of Russian diplomats in March. Tuesday's tit-for-tat move comes 1 month after Sofia expelled 2 Russian diplomats over spying allegations. Russia's foreign ministry has ordered the 2 foreign diplomats to leave its territory within 72 hours. Tensions between the Kremlin and the West continues to escalate as the expulsion comes only days after it removed diplomats from the U.S., Czech Republic, and Poland in similar retaliatory moves. Chad's multi-term serving president Idriss Deby has been killed on the front line while battling rebels. An army spokesman delivered the news on state television Tuesday and said that, quote, Deby breathed his last, defending the sovereign nation on the battlefield. The news came just a day after Deby had been declared the winner in Chad's recent presidential election. This would have been Deby's 6th term following 30 years of service. The presidency will be filled by Deby's son, Mohamed Kaka, who will govern for the next 18 months. Nationwide curfews and border closures have been imposed in the country in the wake of the president's death. Russia on Monday said its airstrike in eastern Syria killed about 200 militants as warplanes hit 2 militant hideouts. In a statement carried out by Russian news agencies, the airstrike also destroyed 24 vehicles and about 500 kilograms of ammunition and explosives. According to the head of the Russian military's Reconciliation Center in Syria, the militants' base had served as a staging ground for terror attacks across the country. Watchers say the latest airstrike might have been in response to recent claims by Islamic State that it had killed 2 Russian soldiers. Russia has been waging a military campaign in Syria since 2015. South Korea's health ministry says there is an estimated 2.6 million people in the country with disabilities. Marking the National Day of Persons with Disabilities on Tuesday, our Kim Bo-kyung visited a farm where those with developmental disabilities can support themselves.
In Yeoju City, Gyeonggi-do Province is a farm that is not only smart, but also helps people with disabilities be self-reliant.
At this smart farm, cherry tomatoes are being grown by local people with developmental disabilities. Thanks to this workplace, they can support themselves doing work that has been properly assigned based on their capabilities.
This farm was established recently after a couple donated their property to Purume Foundation, hoping to support those with cognitive disabilities, including their own son. Public institutions such as Yeoju City and Korea District Heating Corporation have invested in the farm, along with SK Hynix, who promised to pay for the construction cost and become a buyer of the farm's products. The farm plans to hire around 35 employees with developmental disabilities by the end of October.
Statistically, disabled people's employment rate is around 50% on average, yet it is only around 27% for people with developmental disabilities, which is much lower than those with other disabilities. They are less likely to be hired and are more in need of financial independence. That is why we first hire people with developmental disabilities.
Of course, there's some trial and error for workers because this is their first time working in a smart farm greenhouse. Yet our biggest principle is not to hire those who can do the work, but rather to assign the work according to their capabilities. I believe as time passes by, they'll be able to do a variety of other work.
The founders say smart farms seem the most suitable as they not only enable year-round cultivation, but also peaceful and rewarding work.
I take care of tomatoes, and when I get my salary, I give it all to my parents. I think it's a very delightful job.
Though establishing the farm as a workplace for disabled people might look like a small step, it is small steps like this that lead to a better society. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
With the Tokyo Games just a few months away, it's high time to take a look back at the Olympic history. We travel back to 1988 Seoul when boxer Park Si-hun won gold but could not hold his head up high. Our Han Sung brings us the story.
South Korea's last Olympic boxing champion still sighs in pain when his gold medal is brought up. It wasn't joy, but shame on Park Si-hun's face at the end of the Seoul Olympics men's light middleweight boxing final against America's Roy Jones Jr.
The very moment my hand was raised, I knew something wasn't right. Intuition. Afterwards, the press started attacking me when I had absolutely nothing to do with the result. All I did was fight my heart out in the ring like an Olympic boxer would.
Spectators booed as 3 out of 5 judges awarded Park the victory despite Jones landing close to 3 times as many punches.
Roy was just 19 when we fought. I underestimated him. His technical prowess was beyond anything I expected. Speed, power, ring sense. Roy had everything, and I admit he was the better fighter.
The International Olympic Committee investigated the fight's decision amid allegations of corruption, but concluded in 1997 that it had found no evidence to support any of the claims. Jones requested a rematch after the Olympics, but a nagging hand injury sustained 2 weeks before the Games would force Park to retire following their gold medal bout. Jones would go on to become one of the sport's all-time greats, while Park fell into depression.
The media's words scarred me so much that I didn't even want to continue living anymore.
Park would eventually find a new purpose in life, mentoring young boxers, even leading the Korean boxing team at the 2016 Rio Olympics. Today, he coaches Seogwipo City's boxing team on Jeju Island, but hasn't given up on a chance to restore his honor.
I want to sculpt a true Olympic boxing champion with my own 2 hands. I'll be able to leave the ring for good then and walk a new path. If the opportunity presents itself, I love to coach the national team again. It's my dream.
Park's son is working to reunite his father with Jones for a sparring session between the two Olympians' pupils. A reunion that Park has been waiting for since 1988.
로이 존스 당신은 정말 훌륭한 선수였었고 세계 최고의 테크니컬을 복수했습니다. 진짜 당신을 만나면 꼭 포용해주고 내 목에 당신의 목에 진짜 나의 금메달을 걸어주고 싶습니다. 꼭 이렇게 우리가 지금 코로나 때문에 못 만나지만 그런 만날 기회가 주어진다면 꼭 진짜 한번 만나서 33년 전에 그 시간을 대화로서 나누고 싶습니다. 로이 존스 사랑합니다.
한성우, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning. It's going to feel more like mid-June with temperatures set to rise to the upper 20s across the country. So Seoul and Daegu will get up to 28 degrees Celsius, while Daejeon topping out at 29 degrees under mostly sunny skies. But besides the unseasonably hot temperatures, there are a few things to be aware of today. Air quality in the capital region will be bad throughout the day, and ozone levels for most regions will be high. Jeollanam-do province will have very bad ozone levels today, so try to avoid spending too much time outdoors. As for eastern regions, the wildfire risk is getting more serious where the area under a dry weather advisory. So be extra careful with anything that could cause a fire. The warms will stay with us through Thursday, then temperatures will return to the season norms with wide gaps in the readings to persist for the time being. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back at noon Korea time. Thank you for watching.
Is this the kind of future you're dreaming of? This may be